Picture yourself standing on a Viking longship in the 9th century, your hair whipping in the icy wind as you sail through uncharted waters. Your only guides? 3 ravens perched watchfully at the bow. This is the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would change the course of Viking history forever. The tale of Flóki Vilgerðarson. Close your eyes and imagine a world where GPS didn't exist, where maps were rare treasures, and where brave explorers relied on nature's own guidance systems. This is where we meet our hero, Flóki Vilgerðarson, known throughout the Norse world as Hrafna-Flóki, Floki of the Ravens. In an age when most sailors hugged the coastlines for safety, Floki dared to venture into the unknown vastness of the North Atlantic. But what made this Viking explorer truly remarkable wasn't just his courage. It was his ingenious method of navigation. Instead of traditional tools, Floki carried with him 3 ravens, which would become his living compass in one of the most audacious voyages in Viking history. This wasn't just another Viking raid or trading mission. This was a journey that would lead to the discovery of a land we now know as Iceland, a discovery that would reshape the Viking world and create ripples through history that we can still feel today. Think about it. This man trusted his life and the lives of his entire crew to the instincts of 3 ravens. Was it madness? Was it brilliance? Or was it perhaps a touch of both, mixed with that special kind of Viking ingenuity that made them the greatest explorers of their age? In the next few minutes, we're going to unravel this fascinating tale of exploration, survival, and discovery. We'll dive into the mind of a man who dared to think differently, who combined ancient Viking wisdom with revolutionary navigation techniques, and who ultimately found his place in the grand saga of Nordic exploration. If you're fascinated by tales of adventure, if you love uncovering the mysteries of the past, and if you're ready to embark on an incredible journey into Viking history, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and join us at the Medieval Archives as we set sail with Floki of the Ravens on a journey that would change the course of history forever. Let me tell you about a man who wasn't content with the ordinary. In the depths of the Norwegian fjords, where most Vikings were satisfied with their established trading routes and familiar raiding paths, there lived a man whose ambitions stretched far beyond the horizon. This was Flóki Vilgerðarson, and his story begins in the bustling ports of 9th century Norway. Now, you might be wondering what made Floki different from the countless other Viking explorers of his time. While other captains relied on the position of the sun, the patterns of the stars, and the direction of the winds, Floki had a more unusual approach. He was a man who understood something profound about nature, something that would make him a legend. You see, Floki was more than just a ship's captain. He was a master strategist who had spent years observing the natural world. He had noticed how ravens, those intelligent black birds that were sacred to the god Odin himself, had an uncanny ability to find land. These weren't just any birds. Ravens were known among the Norse people as some of the most intelligent creatures in existence. They could remember faces, solve complex problems, and most importantly for Floki, they had an instinct for finding solid ground. In the great mead halls of Norway, where Vikings gathered to share tales of their adventures, Floki's plan must have raised more than a few eyebrows. 3 ravens, he declared, would be his guides to new lands. Some might have laughed, others might have called him mad, but Floki knew something they didn't. These birds would become his living compass. The ravens he chose weren't just random birds caught from the wild. They were carefully selected and, according to some accounts, even trained for this specific purpose. Floki understood that ravens rarely fly out over open ocean unless they know land is within reach. It was this simple but brilliant insight that would set his journey apart from all others. As he prepared his ship in the Norwegian harbor, gathering supplies and selecting his crew, Floki was doing something unprecedented. He was combining the traditional Viking seamanship with an entirely new method of navigation. His ravens would become more than just birds. They would be his eyes in the sky, his connection to the gods, and his pathway to discovery. The morning of his departure must have been a sight to behold. Imagine the scene. A magnificent Viking longship, its dragon-head prow cutting through the morning mist, 3 black ravens perched near the bow, and at the helm, a man whose determination would soon write his name into the sagas of history. This wasn't just a departure. It was the beginning of one of the most remarkable journeys in Viking history. And so, Floki set sail from Norway, heading into the unknown waters of the North Atlantic. Little did he know that his innovative method of navigation would not only lead him to new lands, but would also earn him a name that would echo through the centuries. Hrafna-Flóki, Floki of the Ravens. As Floki's ship cut through the waves toward the Faroe Islands, his crew must have felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. These islands, with their steep cliffs rising from the sea like giant sentinels, were the last known outposts of civilization before the great unknown of the North Atlantic. Here, in this archipelago of 18 rocky islands, Floki would begin his extraordinary experiment. The Faroe Islands weren't just a random stop on their journey. These islands had long served as a crucial stepping stone for Viking explorers, a place where ships could resupply and crews could rest before venturing further into the unknown. The Vikings who lived here had their own tales of mysterious lands further to the west, stories that must have filled Floki's mind as he prepared for the next phase of his journey. Now, imagine the tension on deck as Floki released his first raven. The crew held their breath, watching as the black bird took to the sky. But their hopes were quickly dashed as the raven, after surveying the horizon, returned to the ship. In the language of ravens, this was a clear message. No land lay within reach in that direction. Undeterred, Floki released his second raven. This one's behavior was even more intriguing. It flew in circles, ascending higher and higher, as if searching desperately for something to catch its eye. But ultimately, this bird too returned to the safety of the ship. The crew must have felt their hearts sink as their second airborne scout failed to find new lands. Here's something fascinating about ravens that Floki understood well. These birds can fly at heights of up to 6,000 feet, giving them a viewing range of many miles. When a raven returns to a ship, it's because it has surveyed an enormous area and found nothing but open water. Each returned bird was actually providing valuable information. There was no land within at least a day's sail in those directions. And here's a remarkable detail that often gets overlooked. While waiting in the Faroe Islands, Floki and his crew would have had to maintain and care for these ravens, keeping them well fed, but not so comfortable that they'd lose their instinct to search for land. It was a delicate balance that showed just how much thought had gone into this unusual navigation method. Speaking of names and discoveries, there's an ironic twist to this tale. When Floki eventually reached his destination, he gave it the name Iceland because of the extensive ice and glaciers he found. But anyone who's visited Iceland knows it's far from being a frozen wasteland. In fact, much of the island is covered in lush green vegetation, especially during the summer months. The name Iceland might be one of the earliest examples of misleading travel marketing in history. But before we get to that discovery, there was still one more raven to release, one more chance to find the land that Floki was convinced lay somewhere in the vast ocean before them. This third raven would prove to be the key to everything, but that's a story that deserves its own telling. The moment had come for Floki's final gambit. With 2 ravens already returned and hope hanging by a thread, he released his third and last raven. The crew watched with bated breath as the black bird took to the sky, circled the ship once, and then, in a moment that would be forever recorded in Viking sagas, flew purposefully toward the northwest, never to return. This was the sign Floki had been waiting for. In that instant, the mood on the ship must have transformed from anxiety to electric excitement. Every Viking on board knew what this meant. The Raven had found land. Following their airborne guide, Floki ordered his ship to change course to the northwest. But nature wasn't going to give up its secrets easily. As they sailed through increasingly turbulent waters, the crew faced massive waves and bitter cold winds. Days turned into weeks, and still no sight of land. Some of the crew might have begun to doubt, wondering if they were chasing a phantom. But Floki held firm to his conviction. The Raven knew something they didn't. Then, one morning, through the swirling mists, they saw it. The looming silhouette of a mountainous coast, its peaks shrouded in clouds and its shores rimmed with ice. Floki and his crew had just become the first people to deliberately navigate to what we now call Iceland. But discovering the island was only the beginning of their challenges. What followed was a brutal test of survival that would push these hardy Vikings to their absolute limits. The winter that greeted them was one of the harshest on record. The sagas tell us that Floki and his men watched helplessly as ice choked the fjords where they had anchored their ships, and their livestock struggled to find enough food in the frozen landscape. Here's a fascinating detail that the sagas reveal. Floki and his crew were so busy marveling at the rich fishing grounds they'd discovered that they neglected to gather enough hay for their animals. This oversight would cost them dearly during the long winter months. It's a reminder that even the most accomplished explorers can make crucial mistakes. Yet despite these hardships, Floki's discovery would change the Viking world forever. He had found a land that, while challenging to inhabit, offered unprecedented opportunities. Vast fishing grounds, plenty of timber for shipbuilding, and enough grazing land to support farming communities. Now, here's something to think about. Was it really just luck that guided Floki to Iceland, or was there something more to his method? Ravens are known to be able to spot land from incredible distances, and they have an uncanny ability to remember locations. The Vikings knew this, which is why ravens were sacred to Odin, the god of wisdom. Perhaps Floki's success was a brilliant combination of ancient wisdom and natural science. This remarkable story raises so many questions. Was Floki's raven navigation system a stroke of genius or just a lucky gamble? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by these tales of Viking ingenuity, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Medieval Archives. There are so many more incredible stories from history waiting to be told. And remember, every time you see a raven today, you're looking at the same kind of bird that helped the Vikings discover new worlds. Who knows? Maybe they're still keeping some secrets of their own. So, did you know that Floki gave Iceland its name? If you're enjoying this video, like, share and subscribe to the Medieval Archives channel for more amazing stories. And tell us in the comments, do you think the ravens really helped Floki, or was it luck? The story of Floki lives on through one of the most remarkable documents in Viking history, the Landnámabók, or the Book of Settlements. This incredible medieval manuscript, written in the 12th century, isn't just a dry historical record. It's a treasure trove of tales about the brave men and women who dared to make Iceland their home. Within its pages, Floki's story takes on an almost mythical quality. The Landnámabók describes him not just as an explorer, but as a pioneer who blazed a trail that thousands would eventually follow. What makes this account so special is that it was written by the descendants of these first settlers, people who understood the true magnitude of what Floki had accomplished. But here's something fascinating. While Floki is celebrated for discovering Iceland, he actually never settled there permanently during his first visit. After that brutal first winter, he returned to Norway. Yet his detailed descriptions of the island, both its challenges and opportunities, sparked a wave of interest that would change the course of Nordic history. The saga tells us that when Floki returned to Norway, he gave mixed reviews of his discovery. He spoke of rich fishing grounds and abundant resources, but also warned of the harsh winters and challenging conditions. This honest assessment actually made his account more credible to his fellow Vikings. It wasn't a tale of some magical paradise, but a realistic description of a land that offered both opportunities and challenges. What many people don't know is that the Landnámabók does more than just tell Floki's story. It meticulously records the names and settlements of over 400 original settlers who followed in his wake. Think about that. This is one of the most detailed accounts of a country's settlement in medieval history. We know more about Iceland's early settlers than we do about the first European arrivals in many other lands. The saga also preserves small human details that bring these ancient stories to life. For instance, it tells us that Floki's daughter drowned in the Shetland Islands during the journey, adding a deeply personal dimension to his tale of exploration. These touches remind us that these weren't just legendary figures, but real people with families, hopes and fears. Perhaps most remarkably, Floki's legacy lives on in modern Iceland. Many Icelanders today can trace their family trees back to the original settlers mentioned in the Landnámabók. The book has become more than just a historical document. It's a living link to the past, a bridge spanning more than 1,000 years of history. And let's not forget about those ravens. Floki's innovative use of these intelligent birds inspired generations of explorers and navigators. His story reminds us that sometimes the most brilliant solutions come from observing and working with nature rather than trying to conquer it. The Landnámabók doesn't just preserve Floki's story, it enshrines him as one of the great pioneers of Viking exploration. His journey represents something universal, the human drive to venture into the unknown, to face challenges head-on, and to pave the way for others to follow. In many ways, Floki's story is the story of human curiosity and courage, written in the language of the Vikings, but speaking to explorers of all ages. To truly understand Floki's relationship with his ravens, we need to dive deep into the mystical world of Viking spirituality. These weren't just ordinary birds to the Norse people, they were living symbols of divine power and wisdom, deeply woven into the fabric of Nordic mythology. In the great halls of Valhalla, the mighty god Odin himself was said to have two ravens, Hugin and Munin, whose names meant thought and memory. Every dawn, these sacred birds would fly out across the 9 worlds, returning at dusk to whisper in Odin's ears all they had seen and learned. When Vikings saw ravens circling overhead, they weren't just seeing birds, they were witnessing what they believed to be the eyes of Odin himself. Now imagine Floki, standing on his ship's deck preparing to release his ravens. He wasn't just executing a clever navigation technique, he was participating in an act that connected him directly to the realm of the gods. By using ravens as his guides, he was, in the minds of his crew and fellow Vikings, channeling the very power of Odin. The Vikings believed ravens possessed supernatural wisdom. They saw how these birds could solve complex problems, use tools, and remember human faces for years. In their culture, ravens were seen as beings that moved freely between the physical and spiritual worlds. Some tales even spoke of ravens being able to predict the outcome of battles and guide lost souls to the afterlife. Here's something fascinating. Archaeological discoveries have shown that Vikings often decorated their ships, weapons, and jewelry with raven motifs. These weren't just decorative choices, they were prayers for guidance and protection. When Floki chose ravens as his navigation tool, he was tapping into this ancient tradition, combining practical wisdom with sacred beliefs. The sagas tell us that ravens were particularly associated with exploration and discovery. Vikings believed these birds could see what humans couldn't, not just physically but spiritually. When Floki's third raven flew northwest, his crew would have seen this as more than just animal instinct. It was a divine sign, a message from Odin himself pointing the way to new lands. But there's an even deeper layer to this story. In Norse mythology, ravens were also associated with transformation and destiny. They were believed to appear at crucial moments of change, guiding heroes toward their fate. When Floki's ravens led him to Iceland, it wasn't just a successful voyage. In the Viking worldview, it was the fulfillment of a destiny orchestrated by the gods themselves. Think about the psychological impact this would have had on Floki's crew. When facing the terrors of the unknown ocean, knowing that their journey was guided by Odin's sacred birds must have given them tremendous courage. These ravens were their living connection to the gods, a tangible sign that they hadn't been abandoned to the merciless seas. This spiritual dimension of Floki's journey helps explain why his story has endured for over 1,000 years. It's not just a tale of clever navigation, it's a story that captures the essence of Viking spirituality, where the practical and the mystical were inseparably intertwined. In using ravens to find Iceland, Floki wasn't just being innovative. He was acting out an ancient sacred drama, following in the wing beats of Odin's own messengers. The next time you see a raven, remember, to the Vikings, these weren't just clever birds. They were living bridges between the world of humans and gods, carriers of ancient wisdom, and guides to undiscovered lands. In Floki's story, we see how this deep spiritual belief combined with practical observation to create one of the most remarkable navigation feats in medieval history. As we reach the end of our journey through time, let me ask you something. What would you do if you were standing on that Viking ship, watching your last raven disappear into the misty horizon? Would you have had the courage to follow it into the unknown, like Floki did? The tale of Hrafna-Flóki is so much more than just another Viking story. It's a testament to human ingenuity, to our relentless desire to push beyond known boundaries and to find new paths where none existed before. But what makes this story truly remarkable is how it combines raw courage with clever strategy and ancient wisdom with innovative thinking. Think about it. Here was a man who dared to trust his life and the lives of his entire crew to 3 ravens. In an age when most sailors wouldn't venture far from the coastline, Floki looked at these intelligent birds and saw something others had missed, natural navigators who could guide him to new lands. His legacy lives on not just in the sagas and chronicles, but in the spirit of exploration that continues to drive humanity forward. Every time we take a leap into the unknown, every time we trust our instincts and dare to try something new, we're following in Floki's footsteps. You know what fascinates me most about this story? It's how Floki turned what most people would see as a massive disadvantage, the lack of modern navigation tools, into an opportunity for innovation. He didn't just solve a problem. He created an entirely new way of thinking about navigation that combined natural observation with Viking seamanship. And here's something to ponder. While we celebrate modern GPS technology and satellite navigation, isn't there something profound about Floki's method? He found a way to work with nature rather than trying to conquer it. Maybe there's a lesson there for all of us. If you've enjoyed diving into this remarkable piece of Viking history with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in Floki's position? Would you have trusted the ravens? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to explore more fascinating stories from medieval history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Follow the Medieval Archives for weekly journeys into the most captivating tales from the past. From Viking sagas to medieval mysteries, from ancient battles to forgotten heroes, there's so much more to discover together. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. Until our next historical adventure, remember, sometimes the greatest discoveries happen when we dare to trust our instincts and follow our own ravens into the unknown. See you in our next video.